This is the Digital Trust Podcast. In every episode, we strive to bring support to those of you who serve on the front lines and in the trenches of data and technology. We endeavor to bring understanding to the under-resourced and underappreciated, help remove your stress, and provide relief to your pain. Welcome to the Digital Trust Podcast. Sit down with us as we give you hard-hitting advisory conversations to help you build digital trust with your stakeholders and clients, and actionable takeaways to help you become a digitally trustworthy organization.
Thank you, everybody, once again for joining us on the Digital Trust Podcast. My name is Christian. I'm your host. And joining me today is Tim Nafziger. He is the Tech Readiness Manager at Lansweeper. Tim, it's a pleasure to talk to you again, and thanks for being on with us today.
Christian, thank you so much. This is great. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's talk to some IT folks out there, some IT leaders and practitioners. What, in all of your years of experience, have you seen to be some of the biggest challenges for IT people?
It's a great question. I really feel there's like two areas that really impact the challenges that the IT are. And I'm going to throw myself into that. Us IT staff have. I think one of them is communicating and trying to get the security concepts across to the leadership. Often, especially in large organizations and small, the management in IT is typically responding to like a CFO who may not have a lot of technical experience or technical knowledge. So how do we portray this information? How do we convey our concerns to them in a way that isn't fear-mongering? The other one that I think that I've noticed as well, and it's my experience, has been knowing. What do you know? How do you think about your IT platform and your network and the environment you're in? Knowledge is key. So, knowing what you don't know, I think is the way I like to put it. How do you find this information out and to be able to have eyes in everywhere that you're supposed to be protecting? I think those are the two big ones, at least from my experience.
I would agree with that. And it's funny that the IT person talking to the CFO seems to be a re-emerging theme, even so far with the episodes that we have. Let's go there, and we can even spend the whole episode talking about this if you like. What would be like one piece of advice that you would give an IT leader when communicating the importance of cybersecurity within their organization to the CFO or whomever it might be that they need to talk to?
Yeah. No, Christian, that's a great question. I think this is a challenging one. As I've thought about this, I know you and I talked about some of these questions we're going to be dialoguing about today and some of the topics in general. And this one is just in my mind. How do you get this information across? And it's something that I know personally I've struggled with in different environments I've been a part of. But what I really feel is a couple key things. How do you get on their page, on the same page, their same way of thinking? So especially us IT guys, I like to call myself an IT geek. Sometimes we have geek speak, and that geek speak does not translate across. And so it turns into this fear mongering. So I think ways around that would be so that it's not considered there's fear or there's causing anxiety, especially in leadership, is to meet with them on a regular basis. Let them know of the different events or the security threats maybe that you're seeing, things that you've blocked, just to have that touch point on a regular basis, if it's weekly or monthly, whatever you may have the privilege for. The other thing I think too that is really impactful is knowing their objectives. What are their initiatives that they're going after? How does your security platform and your security concerns address their concerns or maybe their initiatives that they're working on? I feel like those are two areas that could really connect, because then you have, with them, you're on this connecting point to address their projects they're working on, but also to that they start understanding your language on a regular basis. I think the third thing, and maybe this goes a little bit too deep, but I think the third thing we can talk about is doing our research ahead of time. I was just recently, funny thing, I think the past week, I was just addressed by my manager. Tim, sometimes you come with these big things, and that's overwhelming, because I come in with this big concern, and from his position, it may not be a huge threat. So doing my research ahead of time to say, how does this threat or this vulnerability or this risk that I'm seeing, how does this impact the organization? Is it really that big of an impact? Is it a small impact? What's the chances of that impact? Coming to them with some deeper knowledge to help them to relate to that, I think is also really important.
Beautiful. Very simple, very succinct. That is nice, Tim. I think that's going to be actionable takeaways for some folks today. With being with Lansweeper, you live in the world of visibility and IT asset management.
Yeah.
Let's define it first. What is IT asset management, software asset management? And maybe talk a little bit about what the benefits of having an IT asset inventory would be.
Yeah. That you're absolutely right. And by the way, I've done over 25 years of IT experience, from anywhere from desktop support, system administration, security, networking, engineering, kind of all the titles that probably a lot of your listeners also have carried or are carrying. So I come from that experience prior to coming into Lansweeper. So coming into Lansweeper, I wanted to use the knowledge and stuff, information that I had to be able to help IT professionals to discover their environment. So when we talk about ITAM, IT asset management, we're looking at the idea of addressing and keeping track of all of your different types of assets in your environment. Those assets could be physical or virtual. They could be IT, OT, IoT, Internet of Things. If you're not familiar with OT, we're talking about operational technologies. And this is where the world kind of begins to open up when you start talking about IoT and OT, because we start addressing lots of different types of hardware and software and different types of assets. The other one you mentioned too was SAM, software asset management, and you're looking at that point where you're addressing the not just the types of software in your environment, but also the licensing, the versions that you have. Are those versions compatible? So when you ask the question of what's the importance around IT asset management, ITAM, where really it becomes visibility. So this is where, not to be a sales pitch, but looking at Lansweeper as one of the options that are available, you're looking at the ability to discover what's out there, find the types of assets that you have, what versions of software or versions of hardware, maybe the life cycle management, tracking a bunch of that information really gets you visibility into the environment, and then helps you with any vulnerability tracking, risk assessments to understand how healthy is the environment, how secure is your environment, and making sure ultimately when you start scanning user accounts, who has access to your environment. Talk about access controls. Who has access to this, who maybe shouldn't, or verifying that people that do have should have access, things like that. Did I answer that question appropriately there?
It was indeed. And so a follow-up question, how does IT asset management help an IT department with IT budgeting? Is there a tie-in there?
Yeah. No, it totally is. And I look at the life cycle management as a key one, because we start talking about budgeting. I think it's a really interesting topic with IT and security, especially. You put your security hat on, and we all know security tools are not cheap. So understanding what IT assets you have, what life cycle that they're in, start planning your budget. Are they in support? Are they out of support? Are they in life, if I can call it that, versus out of life, or or coming to end of life? Making sure that those things are in place so you can actually track, when do I need to start replacing? Often, large organizations, I've worked with several here, even at Lansweeper, as well as my own experience, you come to this point in your budget cycle where you have been given the green light to go ahead and purchase. So you're given $20,000, go and purchase your software or your hardware. And suddenly you have potentially thousands of new machines, hundreds of new machines, and you're supposed to deploy these. So it being able to track this and kind of create a cycle for yourself to help manage your workload. There's lots of things that go around that. I think another piece of this too is, we start talking about IT asset management, is working not just inside of IT, but like you mentioned, when we start addressing the financial side, this really helps our financial departments within the organizations. So that you're talking to the CFOs, where the chief financial officers can start managing their budget. Which assets do we have in there? How old are they? This also helps with taxation and all this other things that a lot of times as IT guys don't have to deal with. But in the end, this is the information that is really helpful to bring value from the IT side into the organization, so that they can actually be able to help track their finances and actually hopefully get a little tax break on some of those things too. Those are just some quick ideas that I have off the top of my head.
I love that. I think the concept, that theme of IT bringing value to the organization, creating the value, delivering that value, and then somehow being able to articulate that value as well. I would just love to help IT people more with that last one. And you're talking about budget, because that was the question. Tying that in, sitting from the perspective of an IT department, an IT leader, they're dealing with having to cut costs, managing the budget. They're dealing with supporting business processes and the whole kind of core functionality of IT. And then they're looking to manage the security posture of the organization potentially and have a really key and primary role in that. What's the right approach? What is the right balance of all of those kind of three pillars, and probably more that are not coming to my mind right now?
Oh, I know. And that you're asking a great question. And I honestly don't know if I have the exact answer. That's the challenge. Is I think that the key in this is IT is often seen as expense. It's an expense to the company in order to maintain. Often it can be an expense that IT managers really don't want to have to deal with. Just because our software, things that we do, even our salaries can be expensive. And it's just, I get that. So trying to bring some kind of value there. And I think the key around this is understanding the direction the company is going by providing that value through, this is not just how we've protected the environment, but how can we make our staff more efficient? One example is just something really simple. You talk about Zoom, you have Teams, and we have Slack. Those are 3 different messaging systems. They have video systems as well. How can IT be a part of helping to streamline that onboarding and training to help people understand how to use one platform over the other compared to having all 3 in the environment? And I know this is a really sensitive subject because you have your development team may have a desire for one specific application, where the office team may have a desire for a separate application, and trying to get everybody on the same page for finance and ease of management. It's such a broad question and a broad topic. It's really hard to address it down to.
I know. I packed a lot into that one.
That's great. It's good.
Well, we can start walking down that road. And since you passed the audition with this first guest appearance, I think we'll go ahead and invite you back on if you're willing to come on.
That'd be great.
Future. We can talk more.
That'd be great.
This
I'd love it.
I'll give you some time to think about the answer to that, the broader answer to this one. So that kind of brings us to the end of our talk. But I wanted to just ask you if you had any recommendations, something that you could leave our audience with that is probably something from your world, something IT related.
Yeah. Back in 2008, I owned a small little business in Central Oregon. And one of the things I subscribed to was a website. Somehow I found this website, and they had a newsletter. It's Ask Woody. I think it's changed name a couple times. It used to be Windows Secrets. AskWoody.com. Ask Woody is a great newsletter. I think that's primarily how they describe themselves. And this is not a paid thing. They haven't asked me to do this. This is purely a tool that I like to use. And I sign up for these newsletters, and I'm actually looking at here on my screen. They've got a Microsoft DEF CON rating from 1 to 5. 1 being, don't install these patches, they could cause problems. 2, 5, they're, big thumbs up, go ahead and install. 2, security recommendations, free tools, and, different ways to patch. What are some recommended patches for different issues that are going on? It's a great site that I find. And also just the regular newsletter that I get from them has got a lot of good information. I really enjoy them. And I think your readers may enjoy that too.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. We'll try to remember to put a link to that in the description. And with that, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us on IT. We definitely want to have you on. And thank you as well. A special thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning into our conversation, being part of it. And we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Digital Trust Podcast.
Thanks for joining us today on the Digital Trust Podcast. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with someone you care about. And if you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter, please click the link in the description to subscribe. And to put your mind at ease, our newsletter will include episode summaries with key points and actionable takeaways, plus a heads up on the upcoming episode guests. Rest assured, it won't be a spammy sales message, and we will never sell or share your information. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.